Welcome to Nocturnal Tales. Tonight we journey to the fog-laden streets of 1930s London for a mystery spun as a loving tribute to Agatha Christie, the unrivaled queen of suspense. In the refined heart of Mayfair, the Winslow townhouse stands as a sentinel of tradition. Lady Margaret Winslow, a matriarch of unshakable strength, summons Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings to unravel the disappearance of her cherished grandson, Edward, lost amid whispers of gambling debts and forbidden love. As high society's glittering facade masks motives of envy and greed, Poirot's brilliant mind will peel back the layers of deception. Join us for high society scandal, where elegance cloaks intrigue, and every shadow hides a clue. Before we begin, tell us in the comments, where are you joining us from tonight? Your voices light our nocturnal path. And if you'd like to support our storytelling journey, consider joining our membership program. Every bit of help keeps the mysteries alive. Now let the tale unfold. Chapter 1. A Grandmother's Worry. The afternoon sun cast a gentle glow over Mayfair as Poirot and I alighted from the taxi outside the Winslow townhouse. The stately Victorian residence stood proud, its ivy-draped walls and tall windows radiating an air of refined elegance. The distant hum of London streets was softened here, lending the place a serene, almost timeless quality. "Quite a handsome house, wouldn't you say, Poirot?" I ventured, tipping my hat slightly as I took in the scene. Poirot's sharp eyes flicked over the facade. "Oui, Hastings, a home of distinction, and, I wager, one with tales to tell." The butler ushered us inside with practiced grace, guiding us through a marble-floored foyer and up a grand staircase. The interior was a blend of opulence and warmth, polished wood, plush carpets, and family portraits lining the walls. It felt lived in, a testament to generations of care. We entered the drawing room, where Lady Margaret Winslow awaited. She rose to greet us, a striking woman with silver hair coiled neatly atop her head, and a posture that spoke of both dignity and resilience. Her blue eyes, though piercing, softened as they met ours, revealing a well of affection beneath her composed exterior. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice steady yet rich with warmth, "thank you for coming. And this is—" "Captain Hastings, my associate," Poirot replied with a courteous bow. I inclined my head. "A pleasure, Lady Margaret." "Please do sit," she said, gesturing to two armchairs by a crackling fire. The room was adorned with velvet drapes and a grand piano, but my gaze lingered on a portrait above the mantel, a young man with a bright, mischievous smile. Poirot settled into his chair, hands clasped neatly. "Madame, pray tell, what brings such urgency to your summons?" Lady Margaret's hands tightened briefly before she spoke, her eyes drifting to the portrait. "It is my grandson, Edward. He has been missing for 2 weeks, and my heart tells me something is terribly wrong." "Missing?" Poirot's tone was gentle, encouraging her to continue. "Yes," she said, nodding. "The police have been informed, but they brush it off as a young man's whim, some lark he'll tire of soon enough. But Edward is not so thoughtless. He would never leave me to fret like this." Poirot leaned forward slightly, his voice soft with empathy. "Tell me of Edward, madame. What sort of young man is he to you?" A tender smile curved her lips, though her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "Edward is 25, a darling of society, charming, kind, and full of spirit. I've helped raise him since he was a boy, you see, after his parents were taken from us. He was such a lively child, always dashing about, inventing grand adventures. Once, when he was perhaps 7, he climbed the oak in the garden and declared himself king of a hidden realm. I found him there, perched like a little monarch, and he beamed at me, saying, 'Grandmamma, I've saved a throne for you." She paused, her smile fading as she gazed at the portrait. Those were simpler days when his adventures were mere games. Now, his silence. It is as though that spirited boy has vanished, and I fear for what may have become of him. Her voice trembled slightly, the warmth of the memory giving way to the chill of her present worry. He's not without his troubles, talk of gambling debts, a romance some call unwise, but he is my dearest treasure. His silence now, it cuts me deeply. I felt a swell of sympathy for her. It was plain to see how much she'd shaped Edward's life, and how fiercely she loved him still. "When did you last see him?" Poirot asked, his tone soothing yet precise. "At a gala 2 weeks ago at the Dorchester Hotel," she replied. "He seemed distracted, though he tried to hide it. He left early, mentioning a meeting with someone, and the next day—" She reached into her sleeve and produced a folded note. "This arrived." Poirot unfolded the paper with care, and I peered over his shoulder. The words were scrawled hastily. "Must go away for a while. Don't worry. Signed E." He studied it a moment before murmuring, "Most curious. This is all he left you?" "Yes," she said, her voice quavering. "It's not like him at all. He knows how I worry. Ever since he was small, we've shared everything. He'd call or write properly if he could. I've been more than his grandmother. I've been his guide, his confidant. This silence frightens me, Monsieur Poirot." Poirot's gaze softened, reflecting her evident devotion. "Madame, your bond with him is clear, and it is a beacon that will lead us to him. I shall take this case. But first, might I see his room? There may be hints the police have missed." "Of course," she said, rising with a mix of relief and resolve. She led us upstairs to Edward's chamber, a well-kept space with a broad bed, a cluttered writing desk, and a wardrobe full of tailored suits. A faint trace of cologne hung in the air, and a novel lay open on the bedside table, a bookmark nestled within. Poirot moved with his usual meticulousness, pausing at the desk to lift a torn scrap, an invitation to the gala, ripped unevenly. "Interessant," he muttered, slipping it into his pocket. "What's that, Poirot?" I asked, curious. "An invitation, Hastings, but torn. Why, I wonder?" "Perhaps he was upset," I suggested. "Perhaps," Poirot replied, though his tone hinted at deeper thoughts. He then uncovered a photograph beneath a stack of books. A young woman, bold and striking, her smile enigmatic. "And this?" he mused, holding it up. "Who might she be?" "A sweetheart, maybe?" I offered, noting her beauty. Lady Margaret leaned closer, her brow furrowing. "That is Eliza Montague," she said, a note of surprise in her voice. "I've met her at social gatherings, Charles Montague's wife. But why would Edward hide her photograph? He knows I'm aware of their friendship." "Hidden away," Poirot observed, his eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "A secret, perhaps, even from you, madame." Lady Margaret's expression tightened. "He has always been open with me, or so I thought. This troubles me." I could see the concern deepening in her eyes, and I felt a pang of sympathy. Even in their close bond, it seemed Edward had kept some things to himself. Finally, Poirot spotted a small key tucked beneath the novel, its metal gleaming faintly. "And this, madame?" "What does it open?" Lady Margaret frowned, puzzled. "I don't know. It's unfamiliar to me." "Another piece," Poirot said thoughtfully, pocketing it. I watched, marvelling at how he gathered these fragments like a master weaver at his loom. Back in the drawing-room, Lady Margaret's voice carried a fragile hope. "What do you think, Monsieur Poirot?" "I think, madame, that there is much beneath the surface. I shall start at the Dorchester, retracing his steps from the gala. If anything else occurs to you, you will contact me?" He handed her a card, his name in elegant script. She took it with a grateful nod, then added, "There is a ball tomorrow evening at the Savoy, Monsieur Poirot. Many of the same guests from the Dorchester Gala will be in attendance. It might be an opportunity for you to observe them, perhaps even speak with some who saw Edward that night." Poirot's eyes gleamed with interest. "An excellent suggestion, madame. The social whirl, it often loosens tongues and reveals much. I shall be there." "Thank you," she said, her voice steady once more. "For the first time in days, I feel a flicker of hope." Poirot smiled gently. "Hope is a precious ally, madame, and with Poirot it is well-founded. Au revoir." As we stepped outside, the sun had broken through the clouds, casting a warm light over the street. Edward Winslow's disappearance was a riddle, gambling debts, a mysterious romance, a curt note. And already Poirot's keen mind was at work. The torn invitation, the hidden photograph of Eliza Montague, the key, each a clue in his deft hands. As we left the property, I couldn't resist asking, "What do you make of it, Poirot?" He gave me that familiar, enigmatic smile. "It is a beginning, Hastings, a thread to tug. But rest assured, mon ami, Hercule Poirot will unravel this mystery, and Edward shall be found." I nodded, buoyed by his certainty. With Poirot leading the way, I had every confidence that Lady Margaret's beloved grandson would soon be safe, and their loving bond restored. Chapter 2. The Gala's Glitter. The Savoy ballroom sparkled like a jewel beneath the London sky, its crystal chandeliers casting a golden glow across the polished parquet floor. The orchestra's waltzes filled the air, weaving through the rustle of silk gowns and the clink of champagne flutes. It was a scene of pure elegance, a testament to the grandeur of 1930s high society. Yet, as I stood beside Poirot, I felt an odd chill, as though the brilliance masked something sinister. Poirot's sharp eyes swept the room, his head tilted slightly in that familiar feline way. "A splendid spectacle, n'est-ce pas, Hastings?" he murmured. "But beneath the glitter, mon ami, there is a shadow. Do you not feel it?" I glanced about, taking in the swirling dancers and the impeccably dressed guests. "It's all rather dazzling," I admitted. "But I suppose you're right. There's a certain stiffness to it all." He nodded, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Précisément. In such gatherings, the truth hides behind the most polished facades. High society, it is a stage where envy and ambition dance as closely as the waltzers. Come, let us explore this glittering web." We drifted through the crowd, Poirot offering polite nods to those who recognized him. Lady Margaret's suggestion had been apt. Many faces from Edward's last known night at the Dorchester Gala were here, ripe for observation. As we moved, Poirot's gaze fixed on a woman by the grand staircase, her posture rigid as a statue. "Lady Beatrice Hargrove," he said softly, "not a rival for inheritance, Hastings, but for the admiration of the elite. Her envy of Edward's charm is whispered far and wide, a social rivalry, where status is the prize. Note her grip on that purse, tight, as though it holds her very soul." Lady Beatrice was striking, her silver-streaked hair swept high, and her emerald gown shimmering. Her gloved hands clutched her purse with a fierceness that clashed with her cool expression. She turned as we neared, her sharp eyes narrowing. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice crisp as frost. "I hardly expected to find you among the frivolous. Your reputation as a detective is well known, of course. Society does love a good mystery. What brings you here?" Poirot bowed. "Madame, even a detective must occasionally enjoy society's pleasures. And you? Are you finding the evening to your taste?" Her lips thinned. "As much as one can with Edward Winslow's absence hanging over us. It's the talk of the season, naturally, his sudden vanishing. Some say he's fled his debts, others whisper of darker things, though some seem eager to forget." Her gaze flicked to the dance floor where laughter rang out. "Oui, a troubling matter," Poirot agreed. "You saw him at the Dorchester, I understand?" Her eyes flickered. Briefly. He was preoccupied. Always one for theatrics, that boy. Theatrics? Poirot's tone was mild, inviting more. She waved a dismissive hand. Debts, dalliances, such are the dramas of youth. I suspect he's fled to dodge his troubles. Debts, you say? Poirot's brows lifted. You've heard specifics? One hears whispers, she replied coolly. Gambling losses, no doubt. But I'm no talebearer, monsieur. Naturellement, Poirot said with a smile. Your discretion is most appreciated. As we stepped away, he murmured, Debt, a thread to follow. But her reticence, Hastings, it intrigues me. Next we approached Charles Montague, a solitary figure brooding by the bar, his whiskey glass glinting in the light. His face bore the weight of unspoken grievances, and his dark eyes met ours with a flash of irritation. Monsieur Montague, Poirot greeted cheerfully, I am Hercule Poirot, and this is Captain Hastings. Montague grunted. I know you. Your name's not unknown in these circles. Inspector Japp mentioned you once. What's your business? Merely a question, Poirot said. You spoke with Edward Winslow at the Dorchester, oui? A heated exchange, I'm told. Montague's jaw clenched. A trifling spat, nothing more. Yet it drew eyes, Poirot pressed gently. Might I know its cause? It's private, Montague snapped, downing his drink. I've no hand in his vanishing, if that's your game. Poirot raised a hand. I seek only clarity, monsieur. Edward's mood that night. How did he seem? Montague sighed, relenting slightly. Rattled, muttering about debts and some romantic nonsense. I told him to shape up. Romantic nonsense? Poirot's voice was soft. With whom? Montague's gaze hardened. I won't say. Ask elsewhere. Merci, Poirot said, undeterred. As we moved off, I whispered, He's hiding something, isn't he? Oui, Hastings. A man of secrets and temper, perhaps. Our path soon crossed with Reginald Fairfax and Eliza Montague, an arresting pair. Fairfax, a financier with a dazzling smile, exuded charm, his eyes darting as though tallying the room's worth. Eliza, radiant in pale blue silk, seemed fragile, her laughter brittle as she glanced nervously toward her husband at the bar. Monsieur Poirot? Fairfax called, his tone warm. A pleasure to see you in such fine company. The Savoy does host a splendid affair, does it not? Indeed, Poirot replied, smiling. The orchestra is particularly fine this evening. Fairfax chuckled. Quite so, and the company is what truly shines. Naturellement, Poirot agreed, his gaze drifting to Eliza. I hear Edward Winslow was among the dancers at the Dorchester. A charming young man, by all accounts. Eliza's fan stilled, her voice faint. Yes, he danced with me briefly. Fairfax shrugged. Edward was always the life of the party, probably off on some escapade now. Perhaps, Poirot said. Did he seem troubled to you, monsieur? Fairfax's smile faltered slightly. Not overly, though... He glanced at Eliza. He mentioned a debt, but I did not understand if he was owed money or if he owed money, she said hesitantly. But he laughed it off. A debt to whom? Poirot asked. She shook her head. He didn't say. Just that it was nothing to worry about. Typical Edward, Fairfax cut in, his tone dismissive. Always dodging scrapes. Poirot smiled. Merci, both of you. Your insights are most helpful. As we walked away, he mused, Debt again, Hastings. And Eliza's unease. It speaks volumes. The evening unfolded with Poirot weaving through the crowd, his ears attuned to the murmurs of the elite. Near a cluster of potted palms, he paused, overhearing a woman in a feathered hat whisper to her companion, Edward's debts are no secret, darling. They say he owes half the clubs in London. And that affair with Eliza, Charles is livid, I hear." Poirot's eyes gleamed as he caught my gaze. "Gossip, Hastings. It is the lifeblood of society, and often the key to truth." Later, as we circled the room, Poirot's attention was drawn to Reginald Fairfax once more. He stood near a shadowed table, speaking in low tones to a stranger. Fairfax's hands trembled slightly, and he cast furtive glances around the room, his polished charm faltering. Their exchange was brief, and as Fairfax turned away, his posture betrayed a tension that piqued Poirot's interest. Poirot's gaze sharpened, his acute sensitivity to human behavior noting every detail. "Most intriguing, Hastings," he said softly. "Monsieur Fairfax's nervousness, it is a sign perhaps of guilt or fear. Observe the tremor in his hands, the secretive nature of his exchange. This is not the confidence of an innocent man." "Who was he speaking to?" I asked, my curiosity rising. Poirot's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "That, mon ami, is a question worth pursuing. A man so unsettled in such a setting, he hides something, and we must discover what." The orchestra swelled, but Poirot's attention remained fixed on the suspects. Lady Beatrice's icy poise, Charles's brooding silence, Fairfax's strained charm, and Eliza's fragile grace. "There is much yet veiled," he said softly, "but the little grey cells, they are at work." I nodded, sensing the depth of the mystery. The gala's glitter shone bright, but its shadows held secrets Poirot was determined to unveil. Chapter 3. Whispers in the Wind. The Chelsea tea-room was a sanctuary of quiet elegance, its walls adorned with floral paper that seemed to bloom in the soft morning light. Delicate china cups clinked gently on saucers, and the murmur of discreet chatter mingled with the patter of rain against the windows. It was a scene of cosy refinement, yet as I sat opposite Hercule Poirot, I could not shake a sense of disquiet, as though the very air held secrets too heavy for its fragile charm. The previous evening at the Savoy Gala, Poirot had observed Eliza Montague's unease and discreetly requested a meeting through a mutual acquaintance, citing a matter of some urgency. She had agreed, albeit reluctantly, to join us here. Now Poirot's keen gaze roamed the room before settling on the entrance, where Eliza appeared, her silhouette framed briefly by the drizzle beyond. She was a study in strained beauty, pale as porcelain, her blue dress clinging to her slender frame, her gloved hands twisting the strap of her purse. Her eyes darted about, seeking us out, and when they found Poirot, a flicker of trepidation crossed her face. "Madame Montague," Poirot said, rising with his customary bow, "you are most kind to join us." Her lips curved into a faint, tremulous smile. "Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings, I could hardly refuse." "Pray sit," Poirot invited, indicating the chair beside him. "A cup of tea, perhaps? It is a remedy for many things." She nodded, easing into the seat with a grace marred by stiffness. The waitress poured the tea, and Eliza's fingers hovered over her cup, tracing its edge as though reluctant to grasp it fully. Her gaze remained fixed on the amber liquid, avoiding ours. Poirot leaned forward, his voice a gentle murmur. "Madame, I must broach a matter of some delicacy. Edward Winslow, he was more than a mere acquaintance to you, was he not?" Eliza's hand stilled, her breath catching. We were friends," she said, her tone barely audible. "Friends," Poirot echoed, his eyes never leaving her. "And yet the whispers of society suggest a deeper connection. Tell me, madame, is there truth in these rumors?" Her flush deepened, and she glanced aside, her voice quivering. I cannot deny it. We were involved for a time. But it was a mistake, a fleeting foolishness. I assure you, monsieur, I played no part in his disappearance." Poirot's expression softened, though his scrutiny remained sharp. I do not accuse, madame. I seek only to understand. When did you last see him? At the Dorchester Gala, she replied, her fingers tightening on the cup. We danced once. He seemed distracted. He left early, mentioning a meeting. With whom? Poirot pressed, his tone still mild. I don't know, she said, shaking her head. He wouldn't tell me, but he was uneasy. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Poirot nodded thoughtfully. And after that night, did he reach out? No, she whispered, her gaze dropping. Nothing. I thought perhaps he'd gone away, as some have suggested, but... Ah, the note, Poirot interjected smoothly. You've heard of it, then? The one he left for Lady Margaret? Eliza's eyes widened slightly. Yes, through the grapevine. Society talks, monsieur. They say he wrote a brief message, urging her not to worry, but it seems unlike him to vanish so abruptly. Poirot's brows arched. Indeed. And this? He drew from his pocket the torn gala invitation from Edward's room, its edges jagged. I found it in his quarters, madame. Torn, as though in haste or distress. Do you know why? Eliza's eyes widened, a spark of recognition flaring briefly. I couldn't say. He never spoke of it. Poirot smiled faintly, though his gaze pierced. And this photograph, yours, hidden among his books, why would he conceal it if your friendship was known? She bit her lip, her voice a thread. Perhaps he feared someone might find it, someone who wouldn't understand. He was always cautious, protective of our secret. Someone like your husband, Charles? Poirot suggested gently. Eliza's composure wavered, her words tumbling forth, her voice tearing with emotion. Yes, Charles. He's a proud man. If he knew, it would destroy him, and me. But Edward and I ended it that night at the gala. He insisted it was for the best, that there were complications. Her voice broke, tears brimming in her eyes. He was the one who wanted to stop, to protect us both. I didn't understand at first, but he was adamant. He said it was too dangerous to continue. Complications? Poirot's tone was coaxing. Of what sort? He wouldn't explain, she said, her voice trembling. But he was afraid. I saw it in his eyes. He kept glancing about as though shadowed. It was as if he knew something was coming, something he couldn't escape. Poirot's fingers steepled, his interest sharpening. Did you notice anyone unusual that evening? She hesitated, then nodded faintly. There was a man near the cloakroom, tall, dark-haired, with a scar on his cheek. Edward stiffened when their eyes met, and the man gave him a look that chilled me. Edward brushed it off when I asked, but I could tell he was shaken. Most intriguing, Poirot murmured. A description worth noting. And speaking of financial matters, madame, did Edward ever discuss debts or pressures related to money? She dabbed her eyes, hesitating. Regarding our exchange last night, I want to set things straight. I don't believe Edward ever owed money to anyone. There were some gambling debts once, but he assured me they were repaid in full. Any talk of debts beyond that is mere gossip. Nothing more. She paused, her voice softening as she recalled a memory. Now that I think of it, though, he did mention in passing that certain individuals owed money to his grandmother. He seemed deeply troubled by it, though he never named them. To whom did he refer? Poirot inquired. He didn't specify, she replied, her voice dropping to a whisper. Yet I sensed it troubled him deeply, and I once saw him in a tense argument with Reginald Fairfax at a dinner a few weeks ago. It appeared to concern financial discrepancies, and Edward was visibly unsettled. Fairfax, Poirot repeated, his eyes glinting. The financier, a name that begins to echo. He paused, his mind turning inward. Most curious, this mention of Fairfax and debts, when only last night at the gala I observed his trembling hands and furtive glances during that secretive exchange with a stranger. A man so nervous hides a burden. A puzzle begins to form. Eliza's hands shook as she lifted her cup, the tea untouched. "Please, Monsieur Poirot, find him. I fear something dreadful has happened." "I shall endeavour to do so," Poirot assured her, his tone firm yet kind. "One final question, madame. A small silver key was found in his room. Do you know its purpose?" She frowned, puzzled. "A key? No, I've no idea." "Very well," Poirot said, rising. "You have been most forthcoming. If anything further occurs to you, you will inform me." "Of course," she said, steadying herself. "Thank you, monsieur." As we stepped into the rain, Poirot's voice was low, reflective. A scarred stranger and a financier's threats. The threads multiply, Hastings. I nodded, the tea-room's calm facade fading behind us. The rain drummed a quiet counterpoint to the unease Eliza's words had stirred, and I knew Poirot's little grey cells were already weaving the clues into a tapestry only he could yet see. Chapter 4. A Secret Exchange. The fog had thickened as night draped its heavy veil over London, shrouding the city in an ethereal haze that seemed to whisper secrets. Poirot and I stood poised outside our lodgings, the distant hum of the metropolis muted by the mist. Earlier that day, Poirot had been restless, his mind abuzz with the threads of Edward Winslow's disappearance. He had confided in me his growing suspicion of Reginald Fairfax, the financier whose name had surfaced in our inquiries. "Hastings," he had said. The nervous behaviour of Fairfax at the gala, his trembling hands, his secretive exchange with a stranger, and Madame Montague's mention of Fairfax arguing with Edward over debts. These are not coincidences. Tonight, we shall watch him. Thus, we lingered in the shadows, awaiting Fairfax's movements. As we adjusted our coats against the damp chill, Poirot's keen gaze darted across the street, alighting upon a figure slipping away with purposeful stealth. "Mon ami," he murmured, his voice a conspiratorial thread. "Observe. Monsieur Fairfax. He moves like a shadow through the night." I followed his line of sight and discerned Reginald Fairfax, his tall silhouette unmistakable even in the gloom, striding briskly away from his residence. His head turned intermittently, as though wary of pursuit. "Most curious," Poirot remarked, his tone laced with intrigue. "This morning Madame Montague spoke of Edward's debts and his clash with Fairfax. All these details begins to weave a pattern. Why does he venture out now, under cover of night?" A thrill coursed through me. "Shall we follow, Poirot?" "Précisément," he replied, his eyes glinting with resolve. "The little grey cells, they sense a thread begging to be unravelled. Come, Hastings, let us pursue this enigma." We embarked upon our clandestine chase, maintaining a cautious distance as Fairfax wove through the fog-laden streets. The shift from Mayfair's refined elegance to Soho's gritty allure was palpable. The air grew dense with coal smoke, and the faint wail of jazz drifted from unseen haunts. Gas lamps flickered like weary guardians, their light devoured by the mist, casting the narrow byways in an eerie luminescence. Fairfax navigated with the assurance of one well acquainted with these shadowed paths, his steps firm upon the uneven cobblestones. We trailed him, ducking into doorways or pausing behind carts whenever his gaze swept back. My pulse quickened with the excitement of the pursuit, though I marvelled at Poirot's nimbleness. His small stature and careful steps allowed him to move silently, relying on cunning rather than athletic prowess. At length, Fairfax veered into a constricted alley, its entrance hemmed by shuttered shops. Poirot raised a hand, and we pressed ourselves against the damp brick, peering into the murk. The alley was a tunnel of fog, illuminated solely by a solitary gas lamp that sputtered feebly. There, beneath its wavering glow, Fairfax met a figure cloaked in shadow, a man whose hat shadowed his features, rendering him a phantom in the mist. "Remain here, Hastings," Poirot whispered. "I must catch their words." He edged closer, his movements silent as the fog itself. I held my breath, straining to hear. The mist muffled all sound, but presently the low hum of voices reached me. "Here's the payment as agreed," Fairfax's voice, smooth yet taut with urgency. "Ensure the Winslow boy stays out of sight." "Understood," the shadowed figure rasped. "But the boss demands assurances." "Tell him it's handled," Fairfax cut in sharply. "Now go." The man accepted the briefcase Fairfax proffered, then vanished into the fog with a practiced swiftness. Fairfax lingered, his eyes scanning the alley before he turned and retraced his steps toward the street. Poirot returned to my side, his expression somber. "The Winslow boy," he repeated softly. "So, Fairfax is entangled in Edward's fate. But for what purpose?" "Kidnapping, perhaps?" I ventured, my heart racing. "That briefcase, money, surely." "Oui, a payoff," Poirot concurred. "But to silence or to harm? We must delve deeper." As Fairfax passed us, unaware of our presence, Poirot's gaze tracked him. "He proceeds to his office, I suspect. Let us follow." We resumed our pursuit, the fog our shield as we threaded through the labyrinthine streets. Fairfax's office occupied a modest edifice nestled between a tailor and a tobacconist, its windows dark, save for a solitary gleam on the upper floor. He entered, and soon a shadow stirred behind the curtains. Poirot's lips curved with determination. "We must see what he guards so jealously." "But how?" I asked. "The door will be locked." "Observe, mon ami," Poirot replied, indicating a narrow passage beside the building. "There is a back entrance, perhaps less secure. My strength lies in observation, not acrobatics. Let us hope for carelessness on their part." I nodded, relieved that Poirot's plan relied on wit rather than physical feats. We crept to the rear, where a small door stood ajar, likely left so by a negligent clerk. Poirot's eyes gleamed with satisfaction as we slipped inside, ascending the creaky stairs with caution. Within, the office blended luxury with disarray. Plush carpets and mahogany furnishings clashed with scattered papers and ledgers. Fairfax stood by a filing cabinet, sifting through documents with a furrowed brow. He selected a handful, then approached a compact safe, deftly turning the dial. Poirot's eyes sparkled as we watched from behind a towering bookshelf. "He conceals something of great import," he whispered. Fairfax extracted a sheaf of papers from the safe, his face darkening as he perused them. With a muttered oath, he struck a match and set the flame to the document's edge. The fire flared, and he cast the burning sheets into a metal bin. "Now, Hastings," Poirot urged. "We must confront him, but carefully." Poirot stepped forward, his tone calm but firm. "Monsieur Fairfax, we must speak." Fairfax turned sharply, his eyes narrowing as they fell upon us. "Poirot, how dare you intrude—" "Non, monsieur," Poirot interjected, his voice steady. "It is you who must answer. What have you burned? Evidence, perhaps, of your misdeeds?" Fairfax's gaze darted to the bin where flames devoured the papers. "This is my private domain. You've no right—" "Au contraire," Poirot retorted, advancing. "When it pertains to Edward Winslow's fate, I have every right." At Edward's name, Fairfax's composure wavered. I know nothing of that." "Non?" Poirot's stare was unrelenting. "Then why did you pay a man in Soho to keep the Winslow boy hidden?" Fairfax blanched, his mouth working soundlessly. I... Poirot pressed forward, his voice sharp. "And these papers, what do they disclose? Fraud, perhaps, against Lady Margaret's fortune?" Fairfax's hands trembled, but he clenched his jaw, regaining a semblance of control. "You've overstepped, Poirot. Whatever you think you've seen, it's not what it seems." "Then explain, monsieur," Poirot demanded, his tone unyielding. Fairfax exhaled heavily, his shoulders slumping. "I've been managing funds. Lady Margaret's accounts, among others. Edward discovered discrepancies. He confronted me, threatened to expose me. I needed time to rectify the situation." "And so you paid someone to intervene?" Poirot's voice was cold. Fairfax's jaw tightened, his gaze flickering toward the door. "You're reaching, Poirot. I've no interest in meddling with anyone's affairs. I'm telling you, you have it all wrong." Poirot's eyes narrowed, studying Fairfax's tense demeanor. "Your denial is swift, monsieur, yet it leaves room for curiosity." I stepped forward, my tone uneasy. "If something's happened to Edward Fairfax, we'll find out, one way or another." Fairfax turned away, his silence thick with unspoken weight. Poirot signalled to me, and we withdrew, leaving him to his brooding thoughts. Outside, the fog seemed to tighten its grip, a palpable weight upon us. "He is guarded, Hastings," Poirot murmured, "and such caution often hides more than it reveals. We must proceed with care." Chapter 5. The Puzzle Takes Shape. The Gentlemen's Club in St. James's stood as a bastion of tradition, its heavy oak doors a silent sentinel against the clamour of the modern world. As Poirot and I crossed its threshold on that afternoon, a haze of cigar smoke greeted us, curling languidly through the air and mingling with the rich scent of aged leather. The cavernous room was dotted with deep armchairs, cradling the city's elite in hushed conclaves. Portraits of venerable members gazed down from the walls, their stern visages a testament to the club's storied past, while the golden lion, rampant of its crest, gleamed above a roaring fireplace. "Mon ami," Poirot murmured, his voice a soft thread beneath the room's muted hum. "Observe how the silence here is not mere decorum. It is the hush of power, of secrets fiercely guarded. These men, they are not accustomed to scrutiny." I shifted uneasily, feeling the weight of unseen eyes. "It's as though we've stepped into a fortress, Poirot. They're watching us like hawks." Poirot's lips quirked in a faint smile. "Précisément, Hastings. A fortress of privilege, where the elite shield their indiscretions behind closed doors. In such a place the truth must be coaxed forth with care and cunning. Our mission was twofold: to search Edward Winslow's locker and to confront Charles Montague, a frequent patron whose name had surfaced in our inquiries. Poirot had secured the cooperation of the club steward, a stern, mustachioed figure whose air of authority brooked no dissent, and we were led to a private chamber where Charles awaited. He sat in a high-backed chair, his brooding gaze fixed on the fire's dance. A tumbler of whisky rested in his hand, the amber liquid catching the light. He did not rise as we entered, offering only a curt nod. "Poirot," he said, his voice rough with restraint, "what brings you here?" Poirot settled opposite him, his posture impeccable. "Monsieur Montague, I seek to clarify certain details concerning Edward Winslow. You spoke with him at the Dorchester Gala, did you not? A conversation that drew eyes, as we discussed during our previous encounter." Charles's jaw tightened, his fingers tightening around the glass. "Yes, we spoke. I told you it was a trifling matter." Poirot's gaze remained steady, his voice soft yet probing. "Yet, in light of Edward's disappearance, even trifles may hold significance. You mentioned it was about romantic nonsense. Might I know more?" Charles exhaled sharply, his eyes narrowing. "It was about Eliza, my wife. I'd heard whispers, rumors of their entanglement. I told him to keep his distance." Poirot leaned forward, his expression unreadable. "And his response?" "He denied it, of course," Charles said bitterly. "Claimed it was nonsense. But I saw the truth in his eyes. He enjoyed taunting me." Poirot nodded thoughtfully. "And after the gala, monsieur? You left early, I believe. Where did you go?" Charles' face hardened, his voice clipped. "I went home. My staff can confirm I was there by midnight." "Indeed," Poirot said, his tone neutral. "Yet I have spoken with them, and their tales do not align. Some recall your presence, others insist you were not seen until morning. A curious discrepancy, none?" Poirot's statement was a calculated bluff, designed to unsettle Charles and observe his reaction, though he had not yet spoken to the staff. Charles's hands clenched, his knuckles whitening. "They're mistaken, or muddled. I was home, I tell you. I've no reason to lie." Poirot's fingers steepled, his expression calm. "The truth, monsieur, is a fragile thing. It does not bend to haste or temper. You swear you played no part in his disappearance?" Charles's voice rose, edged with frustration. "I swear it. Whatever happened to him, it's not on my head." Poirot rose with a nod. "For now I shall accept your word. Merci, Monsieur Montague." As we turned to leave, Poirot paused, his gaze drifting to the steward. "Pardon, monsieur, but I must freshen up before we depart. Might I use the facilities?" The steward nodded curtly. "Of course, Monsieur Poirot. This way." Poirot glanced at me, his eyes twinkling with unspoken intent. "Wait for me here, Hastings. I shall not be long." I settled into a chair, my mind racing as Poirot followed the steward out of the room. I knew his request was a ruse. His true aim was to examine Edward's locker without drawing attention. His discretion was masterful, as always. Minutes later, Poirot returned, his expression inscrutable. "Let us depart, mon ami," he said softly. We left the club, the heavy doors closing behind us with a muted thud. As we stepped into the street, Poirot's hand slipped into his pocket, retrieving a small, leather-bound ledger. "A most intriguing find, Hastings," he murmured, his eyes gleaming. "You found that in Edward's locker?" I asked, pulse quickening. "Oui," Poirot replied, flipping through the pages. "But first recall the small silver key we discovered in Edward's room. It unlocked a small safe within his locker, revealing this ledger." I leaned closer, noting the scrawled annotations in Edward's hand. A financial ledger marked with his notes. "See here, these entries, they show irregularities in Fairfax's dealings. It seems Edward was gathering evidence of fraud." "So he was about to expose Fairfax?" I asked, my mind racing. "Précisément," Poirot said, his voice low. "This ledger, it is the thread that binds Fairfax to Edward's fate. A motive for silence, perhaps." As we walked away, the ledger rested in Poirot's pocket, a tangible link to the mystery's heart. Fairfax's fraud, Edward's vanishing, the puzzle was taking shape, yet the shadows of this elite enclave loomed ever larger. Chapter 6. The Vigil's Veil. The Winslow drawing-room shimmered with an austere beauty as evening descended, its walls aglow with the tremulous light of countless candles. Edward's portrait presided over the mantel, his rakish grin a silent spectre amidst the gathering gloom. Velvet drapes, heavy with the scent of time, framed fogged windows through which the muted pulse of 1930s London scarcely penetrated. A gramophone hummed a mournful tune, its notes threading through the air like a lament, binding the assembled souls in a vigil as solemn as it was strained. Poirot had orchestrated this vigil not merely as a tribute, but as a deliberate gathering, a stage upon which to assemble all the suspects and study their every reaction. Lady Margaret Winslow stood at the room's heart, her silver hair a beacon in the flickering light, her stern visage softened by the weight of her purpose. Before her sat the suspects, their presence a testament to social duty, or perhaps something darker. Hercule Poirot, diminutive yet commanding, occupied a chair near the fire, his green eyes glinting with the acuity of a cat poised to pounce. I, Captain Hastings, lingered at his side, my notebook open, though my gaze was drawn to the tension that coiled about us like a living thing. "Mesdames et messieurs," Lady Margaret began, her voice resonant with a grandmother's love and a matriarch's resolve, "we gather this night to honour my Edward, to plead for his return. If any among you hold knowledge that could lead to my Edward's return, I implore you, share it now, that we might end this torment." Her words fell like stones into still water, rippling through the room. Lady Beatrice Hargrove sat erect, her fingers twisting her pearls with a restless vigour, the soft clack of the beads a counterpoint to the silence. Charles Montague stood apart, his brooding eyes fixed upon the hearth, avoiding all contact as though the flames might absolve him. Reginald Fairfax's smile, ever the financier's mask, stretched thin across his features, a brittle facade betrayed by the darting of his gaze. Eliza Montague dabbed her eyes with a lace handkerchief, her delicate beauty marred by a tremor that suggested more than mere grief. Poirot's head tilted, his military moustache quivering faintly as he observed. "Most curious, Hastings," he whispered, his voice a thread meant only for me. "Each reacts, yet none speaks. The plea of Lady Margaret, it stirs the conscience or perhaps the fear." I nodded, scribbling a note. "Guilt, do you think?" "Perhaps," he murmured, "or defiance. The little grey cells, they ponder." Lady Margaret's voice rose again, tremulous yet firm. "Edward was no mere boy to me. He was my joy, my pride. Since he was a child, we shared a bond unshaken by time. If he is lost, then so too am I. I beseech you, help me bring him back." Her anguish pierced the room, and the suspects shifted. Lady Beatrice's pearls clicked louder, her lips pursing as though to stifle a retort. Charles's shoulders stiffened, his hands clenching at his sides. Fairfax's smile flickered, a bead of sweat glistening on his brow despite the chill. Eliza's tears flowed anew, though her eyes darted to her husband with a flicker of dread. Poirot's gaze sharpened, his fingers steepled. "Observe, Hastings," he said softly. "The plea, it is a mirror. They see themselves reflected, and some do not like the image." Before I could reply, he rose with a grace that belied his stature, his presence drawing all eyes. "Mesdames et messieurs," he announced, his tone calm yet resonant, "the vigil. It is a time for truth as well as mourning. I, Hercule Poirot, have uncovered a piece of this puzzle that cannot be ignored." From his pocket, he produced the small leather-bound ledger, its pages marked with Edward's meticulous notes. "This," he declared, holding it aloft, "was found in Monsieur Edward's locker at his club. It contains notes that may hold the key to his disappearance." A murmur of unease swept through the room. Lady Beatrice's fingers stilled on her pearls, her eyes narrowing with a flicker of calculation. Charles's gaze lifted from the fire, his brow furrowing in confusion. Fairfax's smile froze, his eyes darting to the ledger with a flash of recognition. Eliza's sobs grew faint, her handkerchief pressed to her lips as she watched Poirot with wide, fearful eyes. Poirot's eyes swept over the assembly, noting each reaction with a keen, unyielding gaze. "This ledger," he continued, his voice measured, "is a silent witness to the events that led to Edward's vanishing. Its contents, they shall be revealed in due time." Fairfax's composure wavered, his voice a fragile whisper. What does it contain?" Poirot's stare pierced him. "Ah, Monsieur Fairfax, that is the question, is it not? But the answer, it shall come soon, and with it, the truth." The room fell silent, the candle flames flickering wildly as though stirred by his words. Lady Margaret's eyes shimmered with hope and dread, her hands clasped tightly. Lady Beatrice's face hardened, her mask of curiosity giving way to a steely resolve. Charles's suspicion deepened, his gaze darting between Poirot and Fairfax. Eliza's fear grew palpable, her handkerchief trembling in her grasp. Poirot turned to the assembly, his voice measured. "The vigil binds us in grief, yet it also binds us in duty. Someone here knows more than they admit. I urge you, reflect upon your silence, for it weighs heavily upon us all." He resumed his seat, his expression serene yet resolute. The gramophone's tune faltered, then ceased, leaving only the crackle of the fire and the oppressive hush. The candlelight danced across Edward's portrait, his smile a taunt to the unspoken truths that lingered among us. "Poirot," I whispered, leaning close, "you've set a spark among them." "Oui, Hastings," he replied, his eyes half closed. "A spark to ignite the truth. The trap, it is set. Now, we wait." The weight of the moment pressed upon me, the room a crucible of tension. Fairfax's pallor, Charles's avoidance, Eliza's fear, Beatrice's restraint, each a thread in Poirot's deft hands. The vigil's veil had parted, revealing not answers, but the promise of them, and I knew what came next would bring the reckoning. Chapter 7. The Truth Unveiled. The Winslow drawing-room, bathed in the tremulous glow of candlelight, had transformed from a haven of elegance into a stage for a most sombre drama. The vigil, now at its peak, held the assembled company in a grip of tension as palpable as the fog that pressed against the windows. The fire in the hearth crackled, casting fitful shadows across the anxious faces of the suspects, each a player in the unfolding tableau. Hercule Poirot stood at the room's heart, his diminutive frame radiating an authority that silenced the murmur of the gramophone, now stilled. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice a measured cadence that sliced through the heavy air, "the hour has come to lift the veil from this mystery. Edward Winslow, a young man of promise, has been lost to us, but not, I assure you, beyond recall. Tonight the truth shall be unveiled." He paused, his green eyes sweeping over the gathering. Lady Margaret Winslow sat near the fire, her hands clasped tightly, her stern features softened by a grandmother's hope. The suspects, Lady Beatrice Hargrove, Charles Montague, Reginald Fairfax, and Eliza Montague, formed a tense semicircle, their expressions a gallery of unease. The firelight danced upon Lady Beatrice's pearls, Charles's brooding countenance, Fairfax's strained smile, and Eliza's tear-streaked cheeks. Poirot produced the leather-bound ledger from his pocket, its worn edges a testament to its secrets. "This, mes amis, is the key. Found in Edward's locker at his club, it bears his notes that reveal a fraud most cunning, orchestrated by one among you." A gasp rippled through the room. Fairfax's smile faltered, his eyes narrowing as he leaned forward. "What nonsense is this, Poirot?" he demanded, his voice a brittle thread. "Nonsense, Monsieur Fairfax." Poirot's tone was calm, yet edged with steel. "No, it is fact. The ledger details discrepancies in the accounts you managed, funds siphoned from Lady Margaret's fortune and others. Edward, he discovered this perfidy, did he not? And you, fearing exposure, resolved to silence him. But not by death, mes amis. No, Fairfax is a man of strategy. He chose to kidnap Edward to keep him alive, for he needed to know the extent of Edward's knowledge, and whether he had shared it with others. Only then could he determine how to proceed." Fairfax's face drained of colour, his hands gripping the arms of his chair. "Preposterous! I've done no such thing!" Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. "Ah, but the evidence, it speaks. The secret exchange I witnessed in Soho, your payment to a shadowed figure, with words of keeping the Winslow boy out of sight. And this ledger, with its damning annotations, all point to you, monsieur, as the mastermind of his kidnapping." Lady Margaret's voice broke the silence, trembling with emotion. "Kidnapping? Edward? He is alive?" "Oui, madame," Poirot replied, his tone softening. "Held captive in a warehouse owned by Monsieur Fairfax on the city's edge. Even now, Inspector Japp prepares to raid this place and bring Edward home." Fairfax's composure shattered, his voice a desperate rasp. You've no proof. This is conjecture." "Non," Poirot countered, his voice rising with quiet triumph. "The proof, it is here. In the ledger, in the testimonies of those who saw you, in the very warehouse where Edward languishes. But you did not act alone, did you?" He turned, his eyes locking onto Lady Beatrice Hargrove. Her fingers stilled on her pearls, her face a mask of icy resolve. "Madame Hargrove," Poirot said, "you too played your part. A rival heiress, consumed by envy of Edward's rising star among the elite. Your status, your place in these aristocratic circles, it was threatened by his prominence, was it not?" Lady Beatrice's lips thinned, her voice sharp. "What are you implying, Monsieur Poirot?" "I imply nothing," Poirot replied, his tone precise. "I declare, you conspired with Fairfax to remove Edward as a rival. Your presence at the gala, while noted, was marked by curious absences, moments when you slipped away unseen, and the ledger, it bears entries that tie you to Fairfax's schemes, transactions that benefited you both, concealed by your alliance." Her face paled, though her defiance held. "This is slander. What entries do you speak of?" Poirot opened the ledger, his finger tracing a line. "Here, madame. A transfer of funds from Lady Margaret's accounts to a shell company, one that traces back to you. Edward's notes, they highlight this very transaction, questioning its purpose. You feared he would expose your involvement, did you not?" Lady Beatrice's gaze hardened, though a flicker of fear betrayed her. "You twist innocent dealings into crimes." "Innocent?" Poirot's voice was a velvet blade. "Non, madame. The ledger, it is clear. Your name, Fairfax, is entwined in deceit. And witnesses, they place you in Soho, meeting Fairfax in shadowed corners. Your desperation to cling to status, to eliminate a rival. It drove you to conspire." The room fell silent, the crackle of the fire a stark counterpoint to the chill of revelation. Fairfax's head sank into his hands, his breath ragged. Lady Beatrice's defiance wavered, her hands trembling. Poirot's voice rose, commanding the space. "Edward was taken to a warehouse, a grim prison owned by Fairfax, where he faced death until this moment. But justice, it is swift. Inspector Japp, he acts now to free him and apprehend those who guard him." As if summoned by his words, the drawing-room door burst open, and Inspector Japp strode in, followed by 2 constables, their faces stern with purpose. "Poirot, we've got him. Edward's safe. Fairfax's men are in custody." Lady Margaret rose, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Safe? My Edward?" "Yes, ma'am," Japp confirmed, his voice gruff with relief. "Bruised, but alive. We're bringing him home." A sob broke from Lady Margaret, her stern facade crumbling into gratitude. "Thank you, Monsieur Poirot. Thank you." Poirot bowed slightly, his expression humble. "It is my duty, madame. And now the law shall deal with Monsieur Fairfax. He shall be taken into custody, for his crimes are proven beyond doubt." The constables advanced, their boots heavy on the polished floor. Fairfax slumped, defeated as they seized his arms. Lady Beatrice's face remained a mask of cold resolve, though her hands trembled. "And Madame Hargrove," Poirot continued, "she must face the jury for her involvement. The evidence, it is not yet damning, but it is sufficient to warrant scrutiny. The court, it shall decide her fate." Charles and Eliza exchanged glances of relief, their own secrets dwarfed by the night's revelations. Poirot turned to me, his voice low. "Hastings, the little grey cells, they triumph once more. The vigil, it has turned a social ritual into justice's stage, as is the way of our time." I nodded, the fog beyond the windows seeming to lift with the truth. The fire's warmth was no match for the chill of the crimes laid bare, but in Edward's rescue there was a promise of renewal. Fairfax was led away in custody, Lady Beatrice facing her reckoning, and Poirot's quiet reflection lingering, a testament to the destructive folly beneath high society's sheen. Chapter 8. Reputation Restored. The Winslow Conservatory glowed with the tender light of morning, a haven of glass and green that seemed to defy the shadows of the past week. Sunlight streamed through the tall panes, casting golden patterns upon the tiled floor, while beyond, the gardens awoke with the sparkle of dew on rose petals. Potted ferns and delicate orchids lent a softness to the space, their fronds whispering of nature's quiet persistence. The air carried the faint trill of bird-song, a melody that pierced the gloom that had so long enshrouded the Winslow estate. I stood beside Hercule Poirot, my eyes drawn to the serene vista, a stark contrast to the tension of our recent vigil. Poirot, his small hands clasped neatly behind his back, surveyed the scene with a satisfaction that softened his sharp features. His green eyes, ever keen, reflected the light like polished jade. "Mon ami," he said, his voice low and melodic, "is it not remarkable how the light restores what darkness has obscured? A fitting tableau for the end of our little drama, non?" Before I could muster a reply, the conservatory door swung open with a gentle creak, admitting Lady Margaret Winslow. Her silver hair gleamed in the sun, a crown of resilience atop her stern, yet tender countenance. Behind her, supported by Inspector Japp's steady arm, came Edward Winslow, pale, his dark hair dishevelled, yet alive. His weary eyes brightened as they met his grandmother's, and a flicker of his old charm returned. "Edward!" Lady Margaret's voice, so often a bastion of authority, quivered with raw emotion. She hastened forward, her stern facade dissolving into a relief so profound it seemed to lighten her very step. She drew him into an embrace, her hands trembling as they framed his face. "My boy, my dearest boy, you are returned to me." Edward's voice, hoarse from his ordeal, carried a faint smile. "Grandmother, I am here. Forgive me for the worry I've caused." Poirot stepped forward, his expression one of quiet triumph. "Monsieur Edward, it is a pleasure to see you restored to those who cherish you. The little grey cells, they have not failed us." Edward turned to him, gratitude warming his gaze. "Monsieur Poirot, I owe you everything. Thank you for my life, for this moment." Poirot inclined his head, his tone humble yet precise. "It is my duty, monsieur. Justice, it must always prevail." Lady Margaret, her composure regained though tears lingered in her eyes, faced Poirot with a gratitude that softened her imperious air. "Monsieur Poirot, you have given me back my heart. Words fail me, but know you have my eternal thanks." "Madame," Poirot replied, his smile gentle, "it is your love for Edward that illuminated the path. A bond so true, it is a force even the darkest greed cannot extinguish." Edward sank into a wicker chair, his strength ebbing, and Lady Margaret's gaze hardened with resolve. "This scandal," she said, her voice firm once more, "it must not stain the Winslow name. Edward, you shall go abroad, Paris perhaps, or Geneva, until the whispers fade. We shall call it a respite, a matter of health. Discretion, it is our shield." Edward nodded, his tone resolute despite his fatigue. "Yes, grandmother, I'll do as you ask." Poirot's eyes twinkled with approval. "A prudent choice, madame. In this England, reputation is a currency dearly guarded. To preserve it, one must sometimes step beyond its borders." Inspector Japp, who had lingered near the door, cleared his throat. "Poirot. Fairfax is behind bars, and for a long time, I'd wager. Lady Beatrice Hargrove's involvement is under scrutiny. She'll face the court soon enough. The law's got its teeth in this one." "Merci, Japp," Poirot said, his tone serene. "The culprits, they reap what they have sown. Greed. It is a poison that corrodes the gloss of society." As Japp departed, Poirot turned to me, his voice a murmur. Hastings, do you not find it poignant? Beneath the elegance of this world, the avarice festers, yet here, in this light, order is restored. I nodded, the warmth of the conservatory enveloping us. It's a relief, Poirot. Edward's safe, and the Winslow name endures. Oui, he agreed, his gaze drifting to the gardens where the sun climbed higher. A quiet triumph, mon ami. The tale ends as it should. We took our leave, stepping into the crisp morning air as Lady Margaret and Edward remained within, their reunion a private solace. Poirot's step was light, his satisfaction evident in the faint curve of his moustache. The mystery had unravelled. The guilty faced their due, and Hercule Poirot, with his inimitable little grey cells, had once more brought clarity to chaos. As dawn breaks over Mayfair, Hercule Poirot's genius restores order to the Winslow legacy. Edward is returned, the threads of deceit, woven from greed and envy, unravelled by the detective's relentless pursuit. The culprits, once shrouded by high society's sheen, now face justice, their schemes laid bare. Yet the echoes of their ambition linger, a haunting reminder of the fragility beneath grandeur. We hope this mystery has enthralled you, dear listeners. Were you surprised by Poirot's deductions, or did you glimpse the truth before the reveal? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If high society scandal has captivated your night, please like and subscribe to Nocturnal Tales for more tales of intrigue. Support our storytelling by tipping us via the Super Thanks option beneath this video, joining our membership program, or visiting our Buy Me a Coffee page, link in the description. Thank you for joining us, and until our next adventure, may your nights be rich with wonder and your days with truth.